What's going on? Welcome to the 5-Minute Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colton Olson, and on this podcast, we spend about 5 minutes, I say about 5, give or take a couple sometimes, breaking down and teaching you to apply psychological concepts that world-class athletes, CEOs, coaches, and elite military units use to take their performance to the next level. The key word here is apply. I don't want you to come here and just get a bunch of information and not know how to use it. I want you to leave here every day feeling like you have something in your hands that you can use right away to improve your life. Let's get to it. Today's topic on 5-Minute Mindset, be day one, the Bezos Letters. So the topic for this one feels appropriate because it's literally day one for me. This is the first episode, but it's also a hugely important concept, right? So this idea of having a day one mentality was popularized through the Amazon shareholder letters. That's why I titled this the Bezos Letters. Every year, Jeff Bezos, he writes a letter to the shareholders explaining the state of the company, all that stuff, and he's ended pretty much every letter for the past 22 years by stating that it is still day one at Amazon. This is a huge deal for him. So what does it mean to be day one? When defining the day one mentality, Bezos talks about the early days of a business, or any venture for that matter. So if you think about the first day of school, the first day at a new job, the first day of practice, how you feel when you get into that environment. It's new, it's exciting. You're ready to take on challenges, and it's all about potential, right? All you're worried about is getting better and growing in that environment. So he talks about in the early days of business, you operate in a high-speed fashion, right? You're always moving, you're always taking steps forward, you're adaptable, you change quickly, and you're willing to take on risk, right? So in other words, your focus is not only on progress, it's not maintaining, but it's about continually raising the bar that you've set. So in the early days of a business, early days of a season, early days of a school semester, it's not about just getting the work done every day. It's not about survival. It's about raising that bar, right? The first little bit, you're mostly concerned about getting better every day. You're setting a bar and then you're worried about beating it the next day. So the reason this day one mentality is so important is the opposite of day one is day two. So day two is a place pretty much everybody goes if you aren't consistently working with intention, discipline, and creativity. Bezos describes day two as stasis, complacency, and eventually decline and death. So he goes decline and death. That's a pretty extreme description of day two. But what he's getting at is when you move past the day one mentality where you're no longer adaptable, you're no longer working in a high-speed fashion, you're no longer willing to take on risk, it's a decline. You get comfortable, you get complacent, and the bar is no longer moving up, it's actually moving down. You're just fighting to keep it in the same place. That's not a recipe for any sort of sustained success in any area. So we know what it means to be day one, right? We just talked about it. It's working in a high-speed fashion, being adaptable, taking on risk, consistently raising the bar that you've set. But how do we, as people that aren't Jeff Bezos running Amazon, consistently channel this day one mentality in our own lives? So Bezos gives us another quote that provides the foundation for creating your own day one mentality. He says, "Every day's a new day. Every day the world changes, and we must look for the change, create the change, and adapt to the change." So the first step, if we're going to create this day one mentality in our own lives, wherever we are, and we should, it helps, we first have to have a heightened sense of awareness. So that's step one. Be aware of the world changing around you. Are you aware of how things are changing in your own life? If so, are you taking appropriate action to adapt to these changes? And then additionally, on top of that, are you aware of what kind of change you can initiate yourself? I would bet in whatever area that you're in, whether it's athletics, you're a student, you're a professional, you're working some sort of job, trying to get a promotion, I would bet that you have some tools at your disposal that you could use to create some valuable change to the world around you. So pay attention. Don't hesitate to use what you have. Have that day one mentality where awareness is a little bit heightened. You're seeing more than you usually do. You're noticing all the little minute details in your world. Notice those, take those in, and then understand the tools that you have to create change and raise the bar around you. So that's the first one. Have a heightened sense of awareness. First step. The second thing you should be doing to create it and maintain a day one mentality, embrace risk and find challenges. So being day one, he says it up there. You're willing to take on risk. It means consistently raising the bar, and raising the bar can only happen if you're regularly taking risks and seeking out the new challenges, right? So if you're risk averse, you're not willing to take on risk, you're not willing to take on challenges because you're afraid of failure. You're afraid that it's going to expose you. You're afraid that it's going to be hard, which those things happen, right? But if we're risk averse, that means we're complacent. You can't actually get any better unless you're doing things that you're not quite capable of doing yet. You got to stretch that comfort zone a little bit. You got to put yourself into a place where you're going to face something that you haven't faced before, and you're going to use it to grow. So the second step, the second thing you can do to create this day one mentality and maintain it, find some new challenges. Remember what it's like the day one of practice. I remember going to my first day of high school football practice and being so scared because I'd never competed against kids that were older than me. There were kids out there that were 18, I was 14. But I had to be willing to take on those challenges. I had to be willing to put myself out there. A lot of you face things like that. You're in a new environment. You're in a place where maybe there's people that are ahead of you and you want to catch up to them, but the only way to do that is take on a challenge. Embrace that risk. Put yourself out there and use those challenges for growth. So the third and final action step is something really simple, but something also really underrated. And it's find joy and wonder in whatever you do. So day one, right? It's so different because it's like you're seeing something for the first time, right? We do in our lives, something like going to the grocery store, going to practice, going to work. It's on autopilot for us. We don't find much wonder in it anymore. When it's day one, remember the first time you walked into the office, the first time you walked into school, the first time you walked out for practice, it was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, right? There's so much joy, so much excitement, so much wonder. That's day one. When I was in graduate school doing my PhD, my advisor, who was one of our professors, had recently written a paper just before I'd got there. And the premise of it was finding wonder and joy in whatever you're teaching and learning. And the title of it was Be Third Grade, which I love. Because you think about a third grader's mentality. Think about if you know someone in your life that's 7, 8 years old, how they see the world. It's pure excitement. It's pure joy. It's pure interest. They're running experiments on everything. Everything they see is untapped potential. They have no idea, right? They've never seen this stuff. So they're finding wonder and finding joy. They are day one. So if you want to be day one, on top of these other things, on top of being adaptable, being aware, understanding how you can initiate change, how you can adapt to change to make yourself better, the people around you better, on top of seeking challenges, finding risks to take on to raise that bar that you've set, find some joy in what you do. Find some wonder. Take off the familiarity glasses and see things for the fresh, exciting things that they are, right? Have some fun. And that, when you have fun, when you find wonder, you find joy in these things, it sparks creativity and it sparks collaboration. It makes you and everybody else better. So if you want to be day one, show up intending to find that wonder as well. So that's all we got for today. 5-Minute Mindset. The first episode is in the books. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. You can find me on Twitter at ColtO45. That's COLT_O45. I'll see you back here next time on 5-Minute Mindset.